Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for watching our session. This is a panel focused on building a quantum workforce. We're going to talk about ways to ascertain knowledge levels and number of experts. We're going to have a broad conversation about this topic. So there's a lot of momentum building around quantum computing, clocks and sensors, the quantum internet, but the supply side, the talent that's needed to drive this is lagging. So we're going to discuss with this distinguished panel how we might address this challenge. The objective being to certainly accelerate evolving business models and ultimately achieve the tremendous potential benefits of quantum. So my panelists include Dr. Deborah Berebichez. She's the lead scientist in microelectronics and quantum computing at VTT. John Barnes, who's the founder of Entangled Positions. Steve Suarez, the global head of innovation at HSBC. Guy Yamen, co-founder and managing partner at TPY Capital. And Liz Durst, the director of IBM Quantum and Qiskit Community. So welcome to all of you. Deborah, I want to start with you. In your role as lead scientist at one of Europe's leading research institutes, VTT, how do you identify talent? And more importantly, do you have internal programs to help build a quantum talent pipeline? What advice might you have for other large tech firms looking to develop a quantum workforce?
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. First of all, let me say that I agree with you entirely about the exponentially increasing demand for jobs in quantum. I did a search today on LinkedIn, and just in the US alone, there are almost 12,000 jobs with the word quantum in them. And we know already that about 2,000 PhDs in physics graduate per year. So clearly, that just that gap alone shows you that there is a big demand that we need to fill in the next 5 to 7 years. So I believe that we have to invest now in filling that demand. And for me, the easiest way to do it is in upskilling. So the people that are already in the workforce, those scientists and engineers that have other specialties and need to learn, just the basics of, and we're still working with the definition of what the quantum computing field is, for example, and upskilling them is the fastest route to get to fill that demand. I also have to say that I was pleasantly surprised coming from New York and from the US about VTT's nimble hiring process, because I myself pitched a job description that didn't exist before in the careers website. And I was given the opportunity and the freedom to define my position with both a quantitative part in leading the creation of the quantum computer and the liaisons with businesses, but also a communications practice where I get to explain to potential end users what quantum computing is all about. And in terms of what they have in store to upskill the workforce, is they have internships and masters and PhD programs where they get people with only a few skills in engineering or so, and then they put them in different research groups to get them to learn about the specifics of anything, whether it's software or hardware skills, to build them up so that they can go on a startup or continue their research life at VTT. So it's been quite amazing to see that.
Yeah. So I want to continue on the theme of sort of creating a new job, right? John, I want to turn to you as the head of a leading quantum recruiting firm. What do you tell clients in terms of how flexible they need to be when looking for quantum talent? A client tells you they want a PhD in particle physics or some other niche expertise. Are you able to suggest, as Deborah was describing, that they hire someone close maybe, but put them in a role where it's not a perfect fit, but train them? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think as Deborah mentioned, with certain clients that we work with, we've got to know over several years, and some actually that are more recent, but we understand the drivers and motivation. There are opportunities to present people that there isn't a job spec written for. For a lot of people, it's because that they've got such a unique blend of skills. No one expects that person to ever be available because they don't expect these skills to come in a single package. But it does come down to that understanding, because within quantum there's such a broad range of organizations, technologies. There's such a broad, and the thing that's often overlooked is that people don't come in neat packages. And that's both sides of the fence. The employer or the employee, there's a human or biological system behind that. So these aren't sort of binary processes that come into play. So, and I think that there's no sort of the classic 101 book of recruitment doesn't really help with this, apart from the rule number one of know your market. And that really does come down to understanding what's required, what's potentially out there, and discussing it. When there's a brief written, what are the parameters? Then look at the what ifs if the exact match isn't available instantly. You can then look at that's kind of the subjective conversation. There's then a more objective conversation where you've spoken with a potential candidate who doesn't tick all of the boxes, but we suspect that they could perform the role. And we can then be a little bit more objective around that. So, within the last year, for example, we've placed several people with masters into roles that require PhDs. Even in one situation, a bachelor's as well. So there's quite a lot of nuances around that, but I think understanding what the drivers are is really important. And as quantum and classic overlap more and more, that could also blur the boundaries. Classic software developers, for example, they're judged more on their commercial experience than their academic background. As quantum and classic and engineering challenges come to the fore, will that mean that we see more of that in quantum? Quite possibly so. But again, it comes down to that understanding and just knowing things, understanding what the process is and what's the end goal.
Yeah. Steve, I want to get your take on this topic. So there's, the perennial question, we're talking reskilling or hiring, right? Especially when running an ongoing and successful business. And your role at HSBC, right, where there's a, existing business model to propagate. What strategies have you found work for identifying talent, maybe putting out a call to arms to solicit existing employees who might be able to be reskilled versus going to the marketplace to find talent?
It's going to be a combination of both. We do need to look internally. We need people that have the domain expertise, people who truly understand the problems. And we want to make sure we're partnering them up with people who understand the technology. And there's a lot more people on our side that understand the problems that we're facing today. But they don't understand quantum computing and what the technology can deliver for them. And so that's what we need to make sure that we're partnering up. If we were to just bring in quantum physicists to start driving it, they really wouldn't understand the nuance of how to solve some of the problems or what we're trying to solve for. So having internal employees is key. But we need to upskill them, right? So we're focusing on making sure that we can upskill them, give them all the tools from understanding what software there is, what's the capability of the software, what works well for quantum computing and what doesn't, right? Not everything will be done through quantum computing. And as John mentioned, quantum computing will have to work with classical systems. And you'll have to have some people on the classical side knowing when to pass the workloads off for the specific quantum computing things to solve. So there will be a hybrid approach going forward. Now, we do go to the outside as well because we want to bring in those experts, bring in the people that have already seen the movie, if you will, and these people can help us expedite the work that we need to accomplish. So having that combination of both internal and external for us is key.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, having people in the company who understand the business, right? Business objectives, it seems that's a key takeaway from your comments. Thank you. I want to turn to education now. So Liz, IBM's been a leader in the quantum education space for several years now, right? Providing access to programs like the Qiskit Summer School, as well as partnering with organizations like the Coding School and supporting their Qubit by Qubit initiative. What impact have these programs had on creating a quantum workforce, do you think? And how do you see them evolving? And how could other companies learn from your approach?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I can't say just how exciting it's been for a journey for our team to have this much support from IBM to invest in these really open education initiatives. And I think without them, I really worry about, do we have the necessary tools for creating a diverse and inclusive workforce and really opening up what previously, until more recently, was this sort of information body of information held by a very small community of academics, mostly teaching at a university graduate level. And so to answer your question, I wanted to both just sort of answer in terms of numbers we're showing, just to it's not just in terms of demand for creating positions, but also just demand at skill for just getting access to this education, as well as where we think and we see this going. So just across IBM and Qiskit's digital channel, if you think of things like the Qiskit textbook, think of our schools, hackathons, Qiskit developer certification, Qiskit YouTube. We have these partnerships that you had mentioned, as well as the IBM Quantum HBCU Center, as well as what we're seeing just across the board in any one of our learning initiatives. This amounts to over 3 million people right now trying to learn quantum computing, just from what we at IBM see, including over 340 courses taught in institutions in over 120 countries. So, put that into perspective, it feeds into our IBM Quantum Internship Program has now grown to be 135 students a year that receive intensive training from our global team spread out across the world. That we really are looking to help others across our industry try to stand up this type of capabilities. And just in terms of a dollar amount, this is talking about over $100 million investment in the last 5 years. And as I said, I feel incredibly fortunate and lucky that we're making this big of a bet on this industry and wanting to work together to stand it up. And in terms of the future, I really do think that we're going to not just, it was interesting just to see as a part of a pandemic how much our education systems were stress tested in terms of quickly shifting so much to digital education or hybrid approaches to learning. We kind of embraced that and went all in, and are going to continue investing heavily in these open digital resources, as well as partnering at a more local level on many of these national workforce initiatives that I see springing up all around the world. In terms of how is it that we can actually go stand this up, I think it's going to be some combination of the traditional university systems collaborating across our various ecosystem of networks with strategic partners to go, and I think, as the previous speakers have talked about, necessary work to go and upskill or reskill many important and critical roles depending on the domains and industry they sit. And what we at IBM refer to in some of these developing personas are really developers at either a kernel, algorithm, or model level, depending on how far we actually start to abstract our tools on both the software and hardware side. One thing many haven't actually heard, and that we take as like a really big badge of honor for advancing these education initiatives, is that Professor John Watrous, who was the interim director of IQC Waterloo, actually took a leave from his position there to join our IBM Quantum team full-time to actually direct and lead our content development and strategy for education. I couldn't be happier to have him on the team. And so you're going to see even more resources at an even higher level continuing to go and be made out in the open in collaboration with many of our partners, as well as building out these digital learning tools and resources to just provide more and more hands-on tools for people trying to do the hard work right now to stand up these education systems where they are.
Yeah. Well, needless to say, kudos to IBM. Thanks to you and the team for that great work. I want to shift gears and bring Guy into the conversation. So, Guy, based on your role, can you give us a sense of the challenges facing, say, quantum startups in finding talent? So they're competing with big companies and other startups and trying to pull people from university settings, perhaps. How do they go about it? What strategies can you show? What perspective can you share with us?
Sure. So as was clearly stated here, there just aren't enough people who know quantum. So for startups, the main challenge is to really draw outstanding people to the field. But remarkably, I think it's actually easier for them in a way to do so than for some of the large enterprises, because those quantum startups do nothing but quantum. And quantum, is exciting. So it's different than being part of a small quantum group in, say, a pharma company or at a bank. No offense, Steve, or even one of the huge players in quantum, which also does a ton of other stuff. Because as a CEO, you can actually reach out to that amazing physics PhD and truthfully say, we are exclusively and single-mindedly committed to this new tech frontier. And by the way, you're going to get an equity stake, which is directly linked to our performance in the quantum field. Naturally, this takes a painstakingly large share of CEOs' time, but based on our conversations with multiple CEOs, no less than 30, sometimes even 40% of their time goes to hiring and training talent. This is across the board, and that's compared with maybe 15 or 20% for non-quantum tech startups. So there's just a huge amount of effort taken by leadership of startups to actually try and get those folks from adjacent fields into the quantum field.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to go to a topic now that I think often gets overlooked or certainly doesn't get as much attention as it might. Deborah, I want to pose this question to you. As a woman in physics and of Mexican heritage, how do you think we can engage more minorities and women in quantum? What issues are being overlooked in terms of quantum workforce preparation, especially regarding diversity and inclusion issues?
Thanks, Chris. So growing up in Mexico City, I was discouraged from pursuing a career in physics and math because I was a woman. And this is not an atypical story even today. So I began my career studying philosophy, and I had to secretly, behind everyone's back, apply to US-based programs so that I could transfer and make my dream come true of studying physics. And it wasn't until I received a full scholarship from Brandeis University that I was able to study physics. And then 6 years after that, I finished my PhD, and I was told that I was the first Mexican woman to earn a PhD in physics from Stanford, where I worked with the Nobel laureate, Bob Laughlin. So with that, the privilege I had to study with these amazing people gave me also a responsibility to help inspire others. And my mission in life, in part, has been to create initiatives and workshops to attract more diversity to STEM. I have to say that, I always like to keep things positive, but I haven't been super satisfied with the diversity and inclusion in quantum. I gotta say, a lot of the conferences, especially academic ones, they're appallingly, white male speakers. And I do think that CEOs of both large companies and also startups in quantum have to make more of an effort to reach women through non-conventional channels. As an example, I gave a talk 2 days ago, a fireside chat with Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Meta, and it was for the Women in Analytics conference. So these were hundreds of top-notch engineers, coders, product managers in STEM and in computing, and very few of them knew about the field of quantum computing. And that taught me that we really, this is an incredible demographic that we should be reaching out to. And so we have to communicate and make it an attractive career path and really, try a little harder to bring inclusivity and diversity to the field of quantum.
Yes. Well, thank you for that great work. Steve, I want to turn to you and move this to sort of a more meta question around getting your take on where organizations should invest and how they should build their quantum talent pipeline. Again, you're sitting, in a role, global innovation lead at a large global bank. What's your advice from where you sit?
Well, I think the key part, and I think everybody has said it on this call, it's really about upskilling and reskilling the people that you have available and making sure that you can give people access to the subject material. I would even say work with senior management to be able to explain business case. I mean, that to me sometimes seems pretty hard, ensuring that you can get the right sponsorship. Some of these things seem so futuristic out that getting people to invest here and now in technology that might come is not that easy. So make sure that you got the right sponsorship as well, so that you can invest and do proper expectations as far as when will you see a benefit. It was funny, we just signed a contract, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden I'm getting people to say, okay, can you give me the KPIs and, how much more increase are we going to see in the optimization problems? And I'm thinking, no, hold on a second. That's not what we signed up for. So setting the right expectations, what you should expect along the way, giving people a bit of a path on how to get there. And so our focus has really been first on upskilling, understanding, working to making sure we're picking the right use cases. I've got people throwing all kinds of ideas that, quantum computer, just, give them this use case, and having them understand what are really good fits for that use case, and developing that. So that's kind of some of the things we've been doing. We're also looking at investing. And so we're investing in some small startups. And by the time this goes out to the conference, I'm sure it'll be announced next week about some companies that we're looking to invest. That helps us bring some of that knowledge in the bank, and helps us get more of a kickstart head forward on what we want to do. I think the bottom line is we need to find commercial application and really work through that and develop our people so that they can push from those boundaries.
Great. So we're coming to the end of our session here, ladies and gentlemen. I have a closing question for you all and ask you to take maybe 30 seconds and just give me your take. Where should we prioritize to improve the quantum pipeline? Some options might be expand university curriculum, fund more hands-on training programs, establish more corporate internships, expand mentorship programs, other solutions. So Liz, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I mean, I think I'm going to say we should do all of those things. I think that everything requires investment. I think that if you want to go focus on diversity and inclusion efforts, I think everything that Deborah said is 100% correct, and it starts early. I think that you need to focus as early as the high school level, getting people at the hands in these resources and into the programs where they can be successful and get into our academic systems. But I think at the same time, not all standing up these like reskilling initiatives and other types of technical training necessary to get us to the reality we are in the next few years. Like, we're also at a gap, but you can only do so much with so much.
Great, thank you. Guy, what's your take?
Well, I think the biggest bang for the buck is probably the creation of some sort of one-year curriculum on top of call it the undergrad programs in computer science and physics and math, but which is also complemented with internship. And based on our work with startups, you could actually do stuff with folks that goes through a program like this if the internship is meaningful enough. That is, it's not a couple of weeks, it's probably no less than 3-4 months at a time. And the combination of this kind of blitz coverage of academic topics plus industry experience may actually help to make a dent even on the short haul. Great.
John, 30 seconds. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with a lot of these things, there's kind of a one thing that overlooks this, and that's integrating all stakeholders. Across the world, there's so many enthusiastic, intelligent, energetic people that are either in quantum or want to be in quantum. So probably talent shortage is the wrong term, and it's skills gap. But we need to integrate all of these parties to really generate that forward momentum and let people integrate into the ecosystem and provide the tools to develop them. And I think all of the things we've mentioned play a part within that.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think? 30 seconds.
Everything I've heard. So everything that's already been mentioned, I'll just add maybe something like synthetic data sets for the industries so that we can all work and it'll be a lot faster. I think that's going to be an issue that might slow us down or slow some organizations down. So as a industry or an organization, if we can give some synthetic data sets that we can all work off, I think that would help us expedite the progress in this field.
Great. And Deborah, I want to end with you. What's your take?
Yeah, I gotta be quick. So I'm gonna bet on corporate workshops and internships because I believe corporations are the ones that have more resources and they're closer to the market. So it's gonna take an iterative approach to standardize things as well as certify certain jobs and get to, something, a better defined workforce, which is what we need the most right now.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me today, and thanks to everyone for watching. I really enjoyed our conversation, and we'll see you at the next one.